Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Nick Rangel. I'm the director of the Honors College at HCC Central Campus, also an advisor for Phi Theta Kappa, the International Two-Year College Honor Society, and a longtime instructor of speech and speech communication. Here to begin talking to you about effective communication, but specifically language and word choice and why they matter. So we begin with a few maxims, things that you want to think about as you're beginning the speech process. And the first, and I just taught speech today, is the notion of monologue versus dialogue, or the idea that you just want to be conversational. People tend to think of a speech as a monologue. You're just speaking to an audience and you're not getting any sort of feedback back. Now, I can't see the folks at home, but I have an audience of a few people and I can directly respond to them. Looking them in the eye, I can tell when there's interest or disinterest, and all those things matter. The best way to think about a speech is that it's formally informal. You shouldn't necessarily speak much differently than you do in real life. It's just conversation with a few more bells and whistles. Also, rich descriptors create immediacy. People aren't always paying very close attention to the things you say, or they can't occupy the worlds you're in. They may not have very detailed visual aids, but I do think I can make the world more vivid to you by describing the world I'm in. You don't get this impression because you probably can't see the room from home. The people in here are probably wondering, that red carpet does wonders for this room. It makes it look different. I think it makes it look like the red room from Twin Peaks, but it's certainly something. The floor between us is very vividly red, and suddenly you have a better picture of where I am physically. Word economy. This one kills me. Do not say in 100 words what 5 words can do. Be economical with your use of words. Some people think I'm giving a speech. That means I need to use many more words than I would have gotten. Cut it off. Cut down the number of words you use. Be word economical. Lots of words are not helpful. Note that when I'm speaking to you, they aren't particularly lengthy sentences. In fact, there's almost a kind of a rhythmic nature to what I'm saying because I'm being word economical. The funniest thing I tend to notice is when students use words in speeches they're clearly unfamiliar with. Why would you do that? And they throw them in because they think they make them sound smarter. Say things with clarity and limit the number of words you take to say those things. And finally, good metaphor is your friend. If I want to explain to you how you should feel about something or to understand a thing you are completely unfamiliar with, I might use the notion of metaphor. You're acting very cranky right now. What can I relate that to? You're behaving like my toddler when they've missed a nap. Hopefully, you're never in a situation where you need to describe someone that way. I find that's very effective when I'm dealing with high school students. They hate being compared to small children. It's especially effective when dealing with my teenagers. If I compare them to a small child, they're more apt to calm down. So let's also talk about how audience changes how and what we say to people. First, you have to effectively analyze who your audience is. Audiences are important. You can't speak the same way to different groups of people. That would make absolutely zero sense. So today, I was working with high school students in a dual credit class, and they're giving persuasive speeches. And I told one of those students, this is probably not a group to yell at, especially when the chances are the thing that you're advocating is something that most of the other students in the room agree with you about. So knowing who your audience is affects how you speak to that audience. So in this case, the what and the why might trump the who. In this public speak or in the pitch competition in general, sometimes the rules will dictate how and why you should adopt the audience just as much as knowing who the audience is itself. You know it's a pitch competition. You know you have a limited amount of time to articulate your vision for your pitch. Knowing what the rules and constraints are will help you to shape your perception of the audience and how you should speak to them. Avoid jargon. Not everyone lives in and occupies the same world you do, so you don't use the same language. I have teenagers, so I've learned new things frequently that I don't use because other people won't understand. Some of you might understand. If you're not enjoying this, you might think this presentation is very mid. What does that mean? If you have a teenager, you know exactly what that means. If you don't, it just means middling. It's okay. When My son was trying to describe his success romantically with others. He said he had Riz. Uh, Again, I didn't know that. Riz itself, I actually looked it up. Riz is short for charisma. So my son was trying to describe himself as being charismatic. I had to describe it to you because all of you really aren't that much older. Yeah, you are. I'm really old. You don't know this. But to younger people, they don't need any explanation. That's their language. So avoid jargon, avoid things that people may not understand because of age, culture. There are a variety of reasons why people may not share the same jargon that you do. Use the language explicit with the competition criteria to cue the audience. Look at the competition criteria. What is it specifically that Pitch Fest requires you to do? Use the language in that criteria. What are they looking for in a winner? If you can mirror that language, it serves as a reminder to the audience, I'm addressing what they want me to address. I'm addressing a critical issue that is not currently being addressed. Look specifically at the criteria that they want you to address, and that is likely to shape how you speak to that audience. And finally, speak as a stakeholder. Don't speak as an outsider. If I'm telling you why you should do something, there is a maxim often in public speaking, and that's based on what we know about human psychology. And if you have teenagers, you might know this to be true too. People don't like being told what to do, even when what you tell them makes logical sense. So you have to find ways around that. So instead of telling the audience, you have to do this, you might explain to them why you are a part of the audience and why you would benefit and why you think this would be a good deal for you. So speak as a stakeholder for the thing or the change that you are advocating for, because that way it doesn't make it look like you're talking to the audience, but you're talking to an audience that you yourself are a part of. So you're a part of a larger conversation, and that helps you again to probably get your point over with that audience. You're not seen as a part of the audience or superior or condescending to the audience. Let's talk a little bit about PowerPoint too. I'm not a fan, and I developed these PowerPoints have progressively been developed over the years. Like Professor Duvall, who's currently in the room, you may not see, helped to develop them. I know over the last couple of years, I've added and subtracted minor things. I think PowerPoint is important. Some people are overly invested in it, but let's talk about it just because some people believe it's essential. It's critical. It can help your presentation. And here's why. A PowerPoint slideshow should supplement, but it shouldn't dominate the presentation. I'll often have students who can speak like this. I will see them speaking like this. They're back to me because they're facing the PowerPoint. It makes zero sense again because I'm addressing the audience. Or I'll see them speaking to the side, holding their head off. It looks like they're about to cough because, again, they're reading directly from the slide as opposed to speaking to the audience. You might also note that the PowerPoint slides that I'm using are kind of sparse, and that's because they're really headers. They're for me to discuss the issues without being bogged down in reading, because reading is boring. I can read in my head better than you probably can read aloud. And we've all heard the tone. We can tell when someone is reading to us. So in keeping with that, the notion of supplementing, less is more. If a PowerPoint has full paragraphs of text, it's bad. If a PowerPoint is overly colorful and I'm focused on the colors and not the substance, that's bad. So less is more with a PowerPoint. A PowerPoint should have just a little bit, enough for me to focus some attention on it, but not distract substantially away from the presenter themselves. So my big problem with PowerPoints is textually oriented when people include too much text, but I think people can also be too ornate with the presentation. There's a lot of presentation competitors for PowerPoint. They've emerged over the years. The most substantial that people used in my classes is Prezi. And I can almost tell you universally when a student uses Prezi, it's because they prefer form over substance and they like the pretty colors, but their presentation is going to be great. So second, just like I said before, minimal text. Don't read. And don't encourage the audience to read too. Just have something up there they can glance quickly, and then that provides you with a breaking off point. And finally, when you have a PowerPoint, this has happened, rehearse. Rehearse, rehearse, rehearse. Rehearse with a PowerPoint. You need to be practiced with it because if something goes wrong, you're wrong. The true story, my first grown-up job, that is my first job in public speaking, I didn't know what to expect. I knew I needed to have a presentation. I was told to bring media for my presentation. So I brought media to plug into the computer, but if that didn't work, you may not remember back in the olden times We used to use overhead projectors, and all classrooms had those too. So I had overhead projection slides made. I had my PowerPoint available via portable media, and I don't think we had the cloud in the same way we do today, but I had my presentation on email that I could open from the computer, and all of those failed. There was no power in the room. When there initially had been power, the light bulb went out in the overhead projector, and I still had to give my presentation, so I did. Never let the absence of something like PowerPoint distract from the fact that you can still give a presentation away from it. PowerPoint is like, I don't know, frosting on the cake. You can make it taste a little better, but it's not the cake itself. If the cake itself is crap, then the frosting doesn't matter either. Okay.
All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Professor Duvall, the program coordinator for speech communications and also faculty as well. And in this portion, we are going to talk about the voice because, believe it or not, it's all part of the package when we are trying to give a presentation to anyone. There are the words and word choice, but it's also about how you say the words as well. And one of the things I always struggle with students is being able to project your voice. You don't have to yell at someone to be heard, but you do have, well, that was loud, but you do have to be able to project your voice and to be heard to people at the very back, because there will be venues sometimes where there will be no microphone, and then you will definitely have to belt it out. But again, there's a huge difference between screaming and projecting your voice and increasing your volume in order to be heard. Also, at the same time, it does matter about your pacing, how fast you go or how slow you go, because for some people, they speak naturally, just a little bit faster, and others just a little bit slower. When you change your pace just a little bit, you'd be very surprised in how well you're able to articulate words. And to the audience, it will show to them that you have much more control in your speaking abilities and also offers a lot of credibility when you're speaking in front of everybody. So for some people, when you slow down just a hint or speed up just a hint, you'd be very surprised at how well you can articulate your words. Also, at the same time, it does matter being able to strike the right tone with people, because you could say hello, hello, hello in, in many different ways. Same word, but at the same time, there is a tone with each that gives off a certain feeling that people will, receive from me just by saying it differently. So being able to strike the right tone with your audience matters quite a lot. And at the same time, that doesn't mean for you to go high pitched all the time, like something like this. Don't do that. Or going really low like this. Don't do that. But but use your tone in the right way and use it with purpose, because people can tell if you are really trying to fake it. People can tell that. Let it come naturally to you, but let it come with purpose as you use your varying tones while giving your pitch. And at the same time, please, please, please don't sound like a robot. So many times I had to tell my students, you are a human being. You're not Siri. You, you are not Cortana. You are not a robot. Please speak like you do with everybody else and to use your varying tones, because I promise you, if you hear me speak like this for the next hour and a half in class, I will put everybody to sleep. We don't need that. And you will also put your audience members asleep as well. Use your varying tones that you have. Also, I'll try to put the right button here. Pauses. Oh, I do love the use of pauses because it's almost like telling a joke. You got to hit the punchline at the right time. Like joke I always like to use in class is, oh, and I just lost the joke. Oh, what do you call a sheep with no legs? And it got awkward. And, and it's called a cloud. So at that point, if I, and at that point, you pity me later, but uh, timing the punchline will showcase that the joke was told really well. If you do it too early, it feels very jarring. If you tell it too late, then it's just really weird. But timing your pauses in your speech does bring about the drama that you do want to bring about from your audience members. And yes, I'll be honest, pausing does take practice in order to get the timing right that you want, and also in how the audience is receiving your message as well. So practice your pauses and the timing of it. Do avoid the filler words, the ums, uhs, and likes. Please, please, please try not to sound like the Valley person in 1997. We don't want that. Or in this case here, probably the better reference will be Clueless, if you ever seen the movie. To be honest, we all have used ums and uhs and likes, but a lot of the times we don't really pay attention to it because our brains automatically filter out those disfluencies. But we still want to try to clean that up. And for some people who sometimes will use ums and uhs and likes a lot, that gets very, very distracting. And also, at the same time, it also loses your credibility while up here delivering a pitch or your speech. So please do all you can to clean up your ums and uhs and likes. Also, at the same time, have articulation. Don't slur your words, don't sound drunk, or any of that sort of aspect. It does matter a lot being able to say your words clearly. And when you clean that up just a little bit, again, you'd be very surprised at how the students or the audience will relate and listen to you and give you the credibility while you are up here. Dialects. I personally love accents and dialects, but at the same time, it does matter a lot to try to avoid the use of dialects. And it also deals with the area of audience analysis as well, but it it's a good judgment call to try to avoid the use of dialects because certain audiences, certain people will not understand certain dialects. Maybe you'll use an idiom in some place in your speech, and you're in a different region of the United States. People will not get it. So we try to avoid the use of dialects. Again, judgment. Have good judgment in this if you want to use it, if the people know you, and all the like. But we try to avoid the use of dialects. To move on, as Dr. Rangel said, we do try to avoid jargon. Please, 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 you don't use jargon. That's all I have to say on that because we want people to be able to understand the message that we're trying to get across to the audiences. So, and we don't want to use words that they may not know. And using repetition strategically. You can always say, and you say the same word over and over and over again, but that gets very dull very quickly for the audience members, and they will no longer pay attention. But if you strategically place repetitive, statements of repetition in the right area of your speech, you can add the drama for the audience members to pay attention. And also at the same time, as I like to do with my students, is I will use repetition and also do a little cliffhanger and then have them want to listen more of what I have to say. Also, at the same time, similes, metaphors, and analogies. There are differences in these. Simile, of course, using like or as. Like I'll use me as an example. Professor Duvall is a pig. Or, as a metaphor, the simile is like a pig. A metaphor, Professor Duvall is a pig. Or in this case here, analogy. And I would always use analogies for speeches because one of the things people don't realize is there's going to be some concepts people won't understand. And so when you bring in another concept and link these two together, people will start to understand what it is you're trying to deliver to them. And that's why when it comes to analogies, I use this a lot in my class because there are going to be a lot of different concepts that people in my classrooms won't realize. So analogies work great. And I always advocate for the use of similes, metaphors, and analogies. Also, imagery. It does matter a lot in the word choices I use. Like for me, today, we are here amongst good people. Today, I am giving a speech. And today, you will all leave this venue with more knowledge and be happy people about it. When you start to use repetition at the beginning of a sentence or at the end, as in you will all leave here with beautiful and wonderful knowledge today. Also, you will get in your cars and be happy you came to this today. When you start to use these kinds of repetitions, it offers the dramatic effects that you want to try to get from your audience members. And I always advocate for that. Again, don't use it every single sentence because you want to use it strategically, as it will bore the members and the audiences that are before you. And my personal favorite, parallelism and antithesis. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. Now, of course, that has two contradicting ideas colliding with each other. But it sounds really good and it's very intriguing to the audience members. And for those of you who remember that quote, it's from A Tale of Two Cities. But when you bring all of these elements together, you start to bring about the drama, you start to really have the audience want to pay attention to you and being captivated. And that's the sort of thing we want to have with our audience members. And cliches. My personal most hated cliche is that's the way the cookie crumbles. Can never, I personally just can't always hear that. And I'm just like, please don't say that. I actually do have a few students who use cliches in their speeches, and I always say, please, please, please don't use cliches. They're tired, they're boring, and more importantly, you're very smart people. You can come up with better lines than cliches. And one thing I always tell my students as well, please, 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 practice. And this does matter a lot. For some of the best performers when it comes to music, public speaking, they do record themselves and they do watch themselves. I'll be honest, it's a very hard thing to do, to watch yourself and critique yourself. It's hard, but it helps a lot to see yourself, see the mistakes, try again in order to clean up those mistakes. It doesn't mean you have to be perfect every single time, but we do want to try to clean up these mistakes that we can have. So practice, practice, practice. Do it in front of the mirror, record yourself, and you start to see the certain things that you can work on when it comes to giving a pitch, giving a speech, or wherever you are when you're trying to deliver the message. And now we turn to nonverbal cues.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Professor Carolyn Cross, and I am also part of the speech faculty here at HCC, and I'm also the director of the Honors College Northeast here at HCC. So I'm going to be concluding this presentation about effective communication, discussing nonverbal communication, your nonverbal cues, your body language, what you wear, your facial expressions, not what you say, but how you say it. All of that goes. So how you listen, look, move, and react. Tell the person, your audience, you're communicating with whether or not you care, if you're being truthful and how well you are listening. So when your nonverbal signals match your words, your audience begins to trust you more. It increases clarity and rapport with your audience. So you want your nonverbal communication to match the words that come out of your mouth. You don't want it to contradict what you're saying. So if you say, I'm happy to be here today, but we don't see the happiness on you, are you genuinely happy to pitch this product to the stakeholders in the community? So you want to make sure everything is matching. So nonverbal communication is multifaceted. There are different aspects and components to nonverbal communication. We have haptics, which is the study of touch. We have gestures. I am a big gestures person. I talk with my hands and do the big dancing. I'm big on gestures. Proxemics, space. How you use the space, how you use the space when you're speaking. Facial expressions, paralinguistics, body language, appearance, eye contact, and artifacts. What I'm going to focus on are gestures, facial expressions, paralinguistics, not what you say, but how you say it, body language, and your appearance. So focusing on eye contact, it is very important to establish eye contact with your audience. Whether you are presenting virtually, you want to look into the lens, or in your audience, you want to scan your audience. Don't make the eye contact awkward and just stare at one person the entire time while you're speaking, because it gets a little uncomfortable and probably will make people uncomfortable if you're staring at one person. So establish that eye contact and maintain that eye contact. Body language, pay attention to your posture. You don't want to be, if you have a podium as this, be mindful of how you use that podium. You don't want to be hunched over, too comfortable. Remember, your pitch is a professional presentation, so you want to maintain that professionalism. So pay attention to your posture. Make sure you're about your feet, maybe shoulder length apart. Stand with your shoulders up. Don't lock your knees. You want to keep the blood flowing and be confident in your posture. Your gestures, again, be mindful of talking with your hands. It's not required. But if you use gestures, you become more of a natural speaker. Just like when you are in conversations with your friends, you naturally use your gestures. You can use that because you come off more conversational. Be mindful of how you're going to use your gestures. Don't seem so robotic that Professor Cross said use gestures. And so when I speak, I'm going to make sure that I use a gesture here, here, and here, and it's not natural. Make sure that you are very natural. Your gestures are natural. And if you don't know what to do with your hands, if you have a podium, you literally can just leave it right here in the podium. But as you get more comfortable, you will naturally start to talk with your hands. Next is physical movement. Decide if you're going to use the space where you're presenting. If you want to use, make sure you're not pacing back and forth, back and forth. Imagine if I decided to talk for the next 15 minutes just like this, back and forth, pacing. It becomes a little awkward. Why is she pacing, right? So be mindful of your physical movement. Again, you want it to be natural. And your personal appearance. What would you wear if you are pitching a product to a stakeholder and you're selling something? Be mindful of your personal appearance, what you wear, how you have your hair, the type of clothes that you wear. If you decide that you want to wear a graphic t-shirt with a blazer, be mindful of what's going to be on that graphic t-shirt and how is it going to help with your pitch and your presentation. You don't want your attire to distract from the message that you're sending to your audience. So be very mindful of your physical appearance. And your tone of voice, Dr. Rangel and Professor Duvall also talked about that. Be mindful, it's again, the meat of your presentation as your words, but it's also how you say it. Be mindful of your rate, your tone, your inflection, all of that when you are speaking. I don't want to become repetitious, repeating what they just said. And know that a majority of your communication is nonverbal. All of these help put emphasis on the words that are coming out of your mouth. So some strategies to boost confidence. Public speaking is not always easy. It's not the easiest thing for people to do. It's not the funnest thing. So what can you do to boost confidence and build up your confidence with this? I always say the more times you do something over and over and over again, the more comfortable and more confident you are at it. And so what Professor Duvall said, practice. One of the key things is record yourself and then watch yourself. It's kind of awkward to watch yourself, but it's very good practice. And you can also practice looking in the mirror, look at yourself or practice in front of your friends and you will get that constructive criticism and that great feedback. So communicating confidently doesn't come natural to everyone. We are all a work in progress. So we all have different communication styles and process information in different ways. You can see from these 3 presentations about communicating effectively, how each Dr. Rangel, Professor Duvall, and myself, how we all communicate and deliver information differently. We're all different. However, with a bit of practice and a few simple tips, you can develop communication techniques your own and feel more confident when speaking with others at work or in a setting. So one, of course, be prepared. You know in advance that you are going to be selling and pitching this product, so make sure you prepare yourself. Think about your message. It goes back to audience analysis. You want to center your message towards your audience. You want it to be audience centered. Be aware of your body language, like I said before. Be confident, be mindful of your posture. Ask questions. Again, when you're practicing, ask questions to your practice audience, but also ask questions during I believe in audience engagement. So to make sure that your audience understands the message that's being sent, ask questions. Do y'all understand what I'm talking about? Yes. So there's nothing wrong with asking questions. I engage. I like audience participation. It breaks the ice and it makes you more comfortable. And practice your communication skills. Practice, practice, practice. All of these skills that you've learned today, you not only can apply it to public speaking, but you can apply it to the workplace, in your classroom, even in your families. And believe in yourself. You can do it. You can't walk around. You have to change your mindset saying, I don't want to do this. This is going to be hard. But if you change your mindset and say, even though this may be hard, I know I can do this. And I know it may not be the perfect presentation because there's no such thing as perfection. And it's going to be a mess up. Maybe big or small, but you still keep going. If you believe that you can do this, you will gain more confidence in yourself. And so my last one, that was what I can remember. Tips for effective communication strategies during oral presentations, general tips. Show your passion and connect with your audience. If you're selling this product, we should see your passion and your interest about this pitch that you're presenting to your audience. So show that passion. You can hear the passion and see the passion that I have for communication strategies. Your audience should see that passion that you have for whatever pitch you're selling. Focus on your audience needs. Remember, you want your presentation to be audience-centered. Research that audience. Audience analysis is a key factor. Please keep it simple. Concentrate on the core message. Smile and make eye contact with your audience. Again, your audience, you should look and sound like you are interested in what you are talking about. Be mindful of your facial expressions. Look pleasant. Now, I'm not saying just smile the entire time like this, like that movie Smile, and you're smiling really awkward. But you want to have that look pleasant. You want to look like you are actually interested in speaking to this audience and pitching this idea to your stakeholders. And again, establish an eye contact. Start strong and end strong. I'm a firm believer in first impressions, but lasting impressions are key as well. So make sure you have that first impression that's really good, and you want to end strong as well. And use your voice effectively. Everybody's not loud and energetic like me, but if you know that you may have a natural monotone and talk like this, or you don't have a lot of energy as I do or somebody else does, if you have your notes, your note cards, highlight certain parts where you want to put emphasis on or you want to pause and use your notes. There's nothing wrong with using note cards or your notes when you're speaking. It'll remind you like, hey, I need to put emphasis on this certain word. And so you have the reminder in your notes. So make sure you're using your voice effectively. And don't forget your body, of course. I can't put emphasis on that. All of those are key roles. And relax, breathe, and enjoy. This should be an enjoyable moment for you all, a teachable moment. Relax and have fun with it. And that concludes our presentation on effective. Thank you so much.